All right, good morning, happy Friday.
Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Okay, so today, thank you very much. Did everybody get a packet?
Yeah.
Okay. So today we are again building on what we've been doing with fractions. Some of you are going to pick it up like that, and you're going to be like, oh, this is easy. Fantastic for you. If you are having a little bit of trouble, let me know. We can do some together. Okay? So, yesterday we looked at comparing fractions. Well, today we are going to take it a step further. We are going to use what we did yesterday to be able to put fractions into order. Okay? Now, I should see this on every single question that you do when you order fractions. Okay? Because this will make your life a million times easier. Okay? On every single problem, you should have okay? You should have it broken into 3 spots for fractions less than a half, equal to 1/2, and greater than 1/2. Because when you start getting more and more fractions that you need to order, sometimes it's kind of overwhelming. You don't really know where to start. However, this is a great place to start. So, how would I know if a fraction is equal to 1/2? Like, without really having to think a whole lot, I can say like, oh, this is equal to 1/2. Hollis?
If you can multiply it by 2 and it equals the same number if it's a smaller number and you know your math facts.
Okay, so if you know math facts and you can pick out the equivalent fraction, you're right. Is there another way, Nate?
If you divide it by 2.
Yeah, if the top is half as big as the bottom. Okay, so looking at these really quick, is 4 halfway to 5?
No.
No. Is 2 halfway to 3?
No.
6 halfway to 13?
No.
No. 3 halfway to 7? No.
We're like the gator.
However, we can still use that information. What's halfway to 7 about?
About 4 half. 3.5. No, 3.5.
Macy? About 3.5. So if half would be 3.5 over 7, is 3/7 going to be less than or greater than 1/2? Less than, right? Because 3 is less than that, what would be for half. So you're just going to put 3/7 over on less than 1/2. You know it's going to be towards that end of your order.
Okay, it's also least to greatest, by the way.
Okay? So I kind of have this one slightly ordered. How about 6/13? Is that going to be less than 1/2 or greater than 1/2? Alex, what do you think? Greater? Well, think about what would be halfway to 13. Addison, what do you think? About 6.5, right? Because 6 times 2 is 12. We're not quite there. We have 6.5. So if 6.5 is halfway to 13, is 6/13 going to be less than or greater than 1/2? Less than. So I know this one's going to go over here too. How about 2/3? Well, what would be halfway to 3? 1.5. So if I have 2/3, is that going to be less than or greater than 1/2? Greater, right? Because 2 is greater than 1.5.
This is so far easier.
Okay, and how about 4/5? What would be about halfway to 5? Mila? 2.5. So if I have 4, is that greater or less than? Greater. So my 4/5 has to go over here. Now, when you kind of break these into chunks like this, you might not have one that's equal to 1/2. You might not even have one that's less than 1/2. And that's okay. This is just kind of a way to get you a little bit more organized when you're looking at it. Now, do we know a way that we could compare these two fractions to see which is smaller?
Maybe.
Lauren? Cross multiplying. Okay, so since we only have two fractions in this, we can reach for this guy and cross.
I don't know.
3 times 13 is
39.
39. Again, if you don't know that, you can always do that little bit of work over on the side. Okay? And how about 7 times 6 is 42. So these are my smallest fractions, and I'm trying to order them from least to greatest. So what is the least fraction I have on this list, Addison? 3/7, right? Because 39 is smaller than 42. So 3/7 is going to come first. Now, what do I already know is the next biggest? Because I have them grouped.
6/13.
How is
6/13.
6/13. They were pretty close, but 6/13 was greater, so it's got to come next on the list. So we already have half of our fractions ordered. Okay, now we got to take a look at these two. We know those two are going to be towards
Wait. Can I show them
the end. No, because I want you to do it just like this. Okay, if we need to compare just these two fractions to see which is going to come first or last, we cross multiply. So we reach for this guy and cross. Wesley, I really like your dramatic,
Cross.
yeah. Like, I feel like it really makes an impact on cross multiplication.
Reach for this guy and cross.
Okay, so you follow the arrows.
I can't even say.
I'm going to move in 1 second, if you can be patient. Okay. 5 times 2, if you follow the arrow, is 10. 3, follow the arrow to 4, is 12. Now, sorry, that was kind of off the screen. Now, which one is going to come next? I'm ordering from least over here to the greatest fraction all the way over there. Adam, what's going to come next? 2/3. Bingo. And that leaves my greatest fraction of this list was 4/5. Okay. Don't panic if this is kind of... Okay, let's take a look at the next one. As long as you can sit quietly and not interrupt your classmates. Okay, they have already added another fraction. Now we have 5 fractions we have to order. Right away, you know you want to divide it out to be less than a half, equal to a half, and greater than a half. Okay. Immediately in your mind, is there any fractions you're looking at right now that you're like, oh, I know that's a half because the top is half as big as the bottom? Lauren? 6/12. Okay, and we know that if you take that top number times 2, you'll get the bottom number, and that's exactly a half. We got 1 down. Now we got to look at the rest of these to figure out whether they're less than a half or bigger than a half. So if we start over here, what's about half of 9?
4.5.
4.5. If I have 8 9s, is that greater than a half or less than a half?
Greater.
Greater, right? Because 8 is greater than 4.5.
That's Adrian's ringtone.
Okay, let's move on to 1/4. What's half of 4? 2. 2, thank you. Hopefully you know that. If I have 1 then, is that going to be less than or greater than a half? Less than, right? Because 1 is less. You see, guys? All right, moving on. What's half of 5? Alex? 2.5. So if I have 2, is that greater or less than 2.5?
Less than.
Less than. So I know my 2/5 is going to go over there. And we already said that half of 4, right? 4 divided by 2 is 2. So if I have 3/4, is 3 greater or less than 2? Greater. Okay, now you are ready to kind of compare your chunks of fractions. Okay, how can we compare 2 fractions?
For the sky and cross.
That could be like my theme, you guys. Like I walk into a room like a superhero, and that's like my superhero phrase.
Reach the sky and cross. And cross. And cross. And cross. And cross.
Hey, Miss Martin, I got the best.
If we gotta keep going. If we follow the arrows, ladies and gentlemen.
This is Jasmine. L's and G's be fun.
If I follow the arrows, 4 times 2 is? Thank you. And 5 times 1 is? 5. Now I'm still putting it in order from smallest or least to biggest or the greatest. So which of these fractions is the smallest? Lauren? 1/4. So then what do I know automatically comes next? Because this was my smallest chunk of fractions. 2/5 automatically has to come next. Do I need to do any comparing for my next fraction? No, because I just know my next chunk of fractions only has 1 in there. So that has to come next, my half. Okay. What's up, Adam? Just stretching? Or crossing? Working on your crossing action? Oh gosh.
Reach for the sky and cross. Reach for
So,
the sky and cross.
remember, we can't have fun if you can't bring it back in.
Only do it when the teacher says so.
Okay, so we're comparing. Now is your chance. How do I compare these 2 fractions?
Cross multiply.
Reach for the sky and
Cross.
Okay, then I follow those arrows. 4 times 8 is 32. 9 times 7 is?
53.
What is it, Tra? 27. Some of you said 21. Okay? Okay. Again, if I'm going from smallest to biggest, what's my next fraction gonna be? Corbin?
3/4.
3/4.
After that,
And then we only have 1 left. And we know that's our biggest one. Okay. Any questions? Any place you got tripped up? Any place you have no idea how I put something in a category?
on the next page.
No, simple.
All right. Class, class, class.
Yes.
You started out really strong, and some of you are having lots of side conversations. Okay, so right away, before you even start ordering fractions, you should have a grid divided out. So you have less than a half, equal to a half, and greater than a half. Are there any fractions up here right now that you can automatically say, oh yeah, that's a half?
No.
No. Because all of these have 8 on the top, so what would have to be on the bottom so we knew it would be half? 16. So we don't have any help that way. Okay? So, what is about half of 9? 4.5. If I have 8, is that greater or less than a half? Greater.
The only small one is 8 out of 4. I'm just writing myself. Yeah. So what combination on this? Like, you don't know.
Thank you. What is 24 divided by 2? 12. So if I have 8, is that greater or less than? Less than. Right? Because 8 is less than that 12 that you just told me was half.
She said 8 over 12.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Well, it could be 4 out of 12.
No, 8.
This is going to take a really long time if you can't stop the side conversations. Okay? If I take 12 divided by 2 to figure out what's half, what is 12 divided by 2?
6.
6. Is 8 greater or less than 6?
Greater.
Greater. So we have to put it over here. Okay, how about the next one? Half of 15. 15 divided by 2 is a half. Something. 7.5. Is 8 bigger or smaller? Bigger. So, we have a third one over here.
It's a giant. 4 of them. That's so many.
Okay, and how about if I take 10 divided by 2, I get 5. Is 8 bigger? Yes. Oh, snap.
Oh my gosh.
I have a lot in that category. What do I automatically know is going to come first? If I'm going from least to greatest. Mackenzie? 8/24. It's the only lonely fraction
Hello,
over there. Now, here is kind of a little trick. I want to see if you can notice anything. Now, before I start comparing all these fractions,
I know what you can do.
now, before you start sitting there and comparing all these fractions, okay, think about it in terms of candy bars. Each of these 4 people have 8 pieces in their candy bar, but their pieces are smaller. Or they're different, I'm sorry. They're different. Because this person has 9 pieces in their candy bar, this person has 12 pieces in their candy bar, this person has 15. So if you break this up, okay, so I need 9 in this one.
It's like 10.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to make these as equal as I can, but I'm not perfect.
Nothing's perfect. No one's perfect. Not even in your foot.
Okay, and then we have one last one. Okay, so these are my 4 different candy bars. They each have 4 pieces gone from them.
Eliminate.
Okay, this one has.
Wait, why did you say 4? You said 4. Each one has 4.
There's 4 different. Oh, I'm sorry. There's 8. So each, right? Because 8 is in our numerator. Thank you for catching that.
Can we just do the small?
I catched it first, but then people never did me because you didn't hear me. Ha.
Then that wouldn't work. Big brain.
I said before with a big cup.
So this was 8 15s. This is 8 12s.
8 30s.
8 9s.
That's a fact.
No.
So take a look at these candy bars. What do you notice about them? What do you notice about the amount gone and the size of the denominator? They are not.
That's what Joelle said.
Macy, what do you notice? Say that one more time.
No, it's like.
So more of the total colored in? Okay. Exactly. Anybody else? Hollis?
So, it's kind of like a number line, but up and down and with only 2 numbers. Like or technically like 3 numbers. Like the numerator is like all the positive numbers. The smaller it is, the number is, the bigger it is, the bigger the number is. And then the line is like the 0, and that would make the 9 right over 9. That would make it the negative, which means the smaller the number, the bigger it actually is. Like.
Okay. So let me break down what Hollis just said to you. Because he kind of confused me a little bit, but I know what he's saying.
Yeah, I did not.
If you
catch
notice,
it.
now this is important. So if you're not paying attention to this, you're going to make your life a whole lot harder throughout the rest of this unit. So I highly suggest you put your handwriting away. The smaller the denominator, the bigger that fraction is actually worth. Okay? Because you think, yeah, I have 8 pieces and they have 8 pieces. But their 8 pieces are actually a lot bigger because there's less. Okay? So now when I go back up and I'm trying to put these last 4 fractions in order, what do I know is going to be my biggest fraction because it has the smallest number of pieces? Isabella? 8 9. Oh, sorry. What do I know is going to have the next biggest fraction because it has the next smallest number of pieces, Mackenzie? That's okay. I know what you meant. Okay, now what I know is going to have the next smallest fraction because it has the next biggest denominator. Logan?
8 12.
8 12. And what do I know I have left? 8 15. Okay, so for future, I know this is super confusing and it's almost like, it's just wonky. You wouldn't think of it this way. But if all of your fractions, because what do you know about the first one we put on there?
I didn't get it. It's just gonna take a
And its denominator.
That it is.
It was the biggest out of all of them. So if you are trying to put fractions in order, and they all have the same numerator, so the same number on top, the ones with the smallest denominator is going to be the greatest.
On the next page.
So you almost have to think about it backwards. If they all have the same number on top, the biggest fraction is going to have the smallest number on the bottom. You with me? I know it is like, you almost feel like it's backwards today because it.
No, I think it's regular math.
What's 2 plus 2? What's 2 plus 2?
Okay. I just want to show you one more before we kind of move on to the next part of this, okay? Which is why I started, so I would make sure I didn't forget it. Okay. Class.
Yes.
So, if I were to draw my 3 categories, where would all 4 of these fractions be? They'd all be less than a half, right? So that doesn't really help us. But what does help us a lot is that all 4 of these have the same denominator. Okay? Because this is normal way of thinking. If I had a candy bar with 15 pieces in it, and Ivan had a candy bar with 15 pieces, I had 4 pieces left, and Ivan had 2 pieces left. Who has more? I do, right? Because our pieces are exactly the same, but I have 4, and Ivan has 2. So when I put these in order, because they all have the same number on the bottom, you can just put them in order like you normally would. So which of these fractions is worth the smallest, or which has the smallest numerator, Mackenzie? 2/15.
No, it's greatest from least.
Oh, they flipped us around. So, that's a big one, you guys. So that's why I didn't put this on my smart board. But on the top of your page, it now says you want them in order from greatest to least. So, we can still start the way we were. If you wanted to find the smallest first, that's fine. But you just have to put it on the side.
Just write 15 on the bottom.
What is going to be the next smallest? Lauren? What'd you say? 3/15. Bingo. What do I know is going to be the biggest fraction? Lexi? 5/15 because it has the biggest number in the numerator. And what I have left is what? 4/15.
Oh god.
Okay? So, here's my 2 biggest tips when ordering fractions. The first one is look at, well, yes, read the directions, absolutely. Because sometimes they want it biggest to smallest, and sometimes they want it smallest to biggest. However, always look at your fractions all together at first. Because this would have been a whole lot of work comparing and putting them in our organizer, only to realize that they're all less than half. But if you look right when you're like, oh, they all have the same denominator, so I can just put them in order. Okay? That's easiest. If they don't have the same number on the top, or they don't all have the same number on the bottom, divide your paper into those sections, less than a half, equal to half, greater than a half. Okay, because otherwise it's kind of like trying to find a needle in a haystack. You don't really know where to start.
Unless it's the needle.
Okay, stop right now.
Unless you know exactly where the needle is, that's unlikely.
Okay. Any questions so far? You feeling okay with it? Okay. Here is what we are going to do. Let's do our check-in right now.
Not a second.